We're pleased to have this morning David Genovese and Kate Perez joining us to talk about the Corbin District and two decades it took to reset Darien's downtown. It is the largest real estate development in Darien's history, I think. It's taking shape on almost 7 acres in the heart of downtown, of course. And the purpose is to reimagine Darien by resetting the town's shopping, dining, lifestyle, and entertainment experiences. Our speakers, David Genovese is CEO of Baywater Properties, which is a privately held commercial real estate company in Fairfield County and Westchester County. He is the project developer, and joining him is Kate Perez, who's the Corbin District's project executive. The district began its transformation, you'll be surprised, 6 years ago in 2019, but it was after many, many years of what professionals in the industry called assembling the land. They had to acquire all the land, which took years and years. I'm sure they'll talk about that. They will provide an update on the project size, the completion date, timeline, and leasing status for retail and office tenants who've already pre-leased space and are committed to coming to Darien. They'll also talk about some of the opportunities and challenges they faced along the way. David founded Baywater Properties in 2001, following a 12-year career in real estate investment banking in New York and in London. Prior to founding Baywater, he served as co-head of real estate investment banking for Credit Suisse First Boston. Prior to that, he served as managing director in Bankers Trust Company's real estate investment group. Through his career in investment banking, David was responsible for a variety of transactions totaling, pretty surprising, $15 billion of transactions. He's an honors graduate from Colby College and the London School of Economics and in political science, and received an MBA from Wharton and at the University of Pennsylvania. He's also, as many of you know, deeply involved in the community. He's currently or previously has been a member of the board of the Darien Athletic Foundation, the Darien Foundation, the Darien Historical Society, the Darien YMCA, and Darien Revitalization, Inc., in addition to serving on the Human Services Council of Norwalk and the Real Estate Finance Association of Connecticut. Kate Perez joined Baywater in 2019 after 10 years in real estate development and architecture. Prior to Baywater, she was an assistant vice president of the CIM Group, overseeing the design and construction of large-scale ground-up and conversion projects in New York City and in Boston. She was an architect at Robert A.M. Stern in New York City and Elkus Manfredi in Boston, earned a Bachelor of Architecture degree from Notre Dame, and has her master's in architecture from Yale. She's a registered architect in New York, a certified lead environmental professional, and serves on the board of Darien Library and also the Real Estate Finance Association of Connecticut. More importantly, they both live and work in Darien. I remember 18 years ago, pre-crash in 2007, David Genovese was listed as one of 40 under 40 back then, which means, of course, he's qualified for membership in the DMA today. So David Genovese and Kate Perez, thank you for coming.
Do I really qualify? When can you qualify? Huh? Thank you so much for having me. I was trying to think back to how many times I've been before this group. It's at least 4, maybe 5 times over 20 years. And the project as it exists today looks a lot different than where we thought we were going or what it looked like when we set out on this journey in 2005. So we're really excited to be here with you. Probably the last time we'll come to this group and talk about the Corbin District. Hopefully, I would suggest when we're done, we have a special lunch and invite you guys down to one of the restaurants and host a lunch of some kind for this group, if you guys are game. All right. It might be free. We'll see. Well, maybe just a French onion soup for each of you. But honestly, you guys have been great over the years. I call this group the brain trust of Darien. I've gotten great thoughts and advice and support also just from so many of you over the years. And honestly, I'm grateful for all of you and for the time you take. It's an amazing group. All right, let's see if we can make this work. Doug might have been right. Oh, let's see. Mike, I might need your help. Oh, down, okay. So I wanted to begin by saying that it's a little bit of a lag. This might be a problem.
There's like a 4-second lag.
Oh, too much coffee. Developers always like to talk about the before and the after. And so they'll show you, especially in zoning meetings when they're trying to convince a, kind of ornery zoning board or worried zoning board, not Joe Spain, by the way, he was never ornery. But that, what they're going to do is going to be great. So they love the before and after. So this is a before of the Bank of America building, which some of you may remember. It was built by Connecticut Bank and Trust. It was their headquarters building. It was functionally obsolete. It was on a ground lease. This was very complicated. There was a landowner, Mr. Gibb, former president of Weburn, who owned the land. He had leased the land to to Connecticut Bank and Trust for their headquarters. A guy named Roger Keefe was the CEO at the time, and he basically wanted to build a headquarters here in Darien. So Mr. Gibb, John Gibb, leases the land to the bank. The bank needs someone to build it. They bring in a builder from Greenwich, Brud DeLuca Construction, to build the building. And the deal they cut was sort of unorthodox. It was a long-term ground lease. Every 10 years, the bank had the option to purchase the land and the building. It was a low rent, very low rent. At the time, it didn't seem like it would be, but over as 30, 40, 50 years passed, it was too low. And but given that the building was subject to this purchase option every 10 years, it was hard for the leaseholder to, really take care of it because they thought they were always at risk of losing it. And so that's why it sort of ended up in the physical state that it did. And it was a mess. And we never intended at the beginning to include this. Penny Glassmeyer, my partner, the three original partners in the project were Penny Glassmeyer, who many of you will remember, and Richard Gunthal, who at least two of us in this room worked for at Bankers Trust Company. We never intended to include this building, but the longer we got into it and the more progress we made on the assemblage, especially Penny and I were sort of looking at it going, God, we can't build something great from Corbin Drive to the Bank of America building and then just leave that there. It's going to seem incongruous. It's going to feel weird. And I think that, one of the blessings or curses of this whole project, if I'm being honest, is that Penny and I always had a spirit of like, we're doing this once, let's do it right. Even if it takes a little longer, even if it costs a little more, even if it's a little harder, because we cared about the place and we were like, we want this to be somewhat of a legacy project for us. So that's the before. And oh God, I'm gonna get good at this. I will get good at this. Am I not pointing in the right direction? Okay. There. So there's the after. The tenants changed, but you get the point. That's the before and the after of what was going to be. This is a view of the building going up across from the Darien Sport Shop now. Now this is a little different. When I push it, it goes backwards. And I'm pushing the same button. You know what? Why don't I just say switch? Okay, so let's switch to the next. Okay, so this, you might wonder, why is David putting a picture of himself on here? This is me before. This is me at the beginning of the Corbin District idea in 2005. I had brown hair that was further down my forehead. I was going fishing with my daughter, Lily, little sippy cup in my hand, and flip to after the next one next. This is me. About 18 months ago with shingles in my eye from the stress associated with the Corbin District, hair turned gray and not looking like that vibrant young man on the dock. By the way, while I'm at it, I always do this. Have all of you had your shingle shot? If you have not, Shingrets, get the shingle shot. It's not worth it. I'm the walking PSA for the shingle shot in Darien. Grebes has told me 400 people have gone to Grebes to get their shingle shot because of me. It's bad. And if you get it in your eye, it's really bad. All right, next. So as Doug said, the total project required the assemblage of a number of properties. It was a total of something like 15 properties. The sport shop was, the Bank of America was a building with 3 different partners, the ground owner, the leaseholder, the bank. Fairbanks Photo owned their building. Darien Electric owned a building. What was her name? I can't even remember now. There was a family that owned the three stores from the driveway down the middle to Fairbanks, or to a double exposure Darien Electric. There was the Odysseus family from Greenwich. There was the original properties that Steve Zangrillo and Dr. Felder sold to Penny, Dick, and me, 10 Corbin Drive and the post office. But by assembling it, we created 7 acres. And next slide. Which in the end will give us the opportunity to create 32 stores, 7 dining establishments. That's kind of loosely defined as like a restaurant or a food business of some kind, like a coffee shop or a full service restaurant. And I'll come to who those are. 112 residences, 110,000 feet of office space, a total of about 100,000 feet of retail, and 850 parking spaces. It was actually, by the way, very nice to pull in here today and find a parking space, number one, fundamentally important. And number two, not be the one people were complaining to about the tight parking in downtown. Next. And this gives you a view of the site. It's in the middle of downtown, opposite the Whole Foods market, right on the exit ramp. And I had been a part of, many of you have heard this before, but I'll just try to be quick. I'd been a part of this early effort in town before I even owned any properties in town to try to improve the downtown. Going way back, when I moved back in 2001, I met Yvonne Klein at a chili contest in my neighborhood, chili baking contest, which I did not win. And she said, I understand you're in real estate. You want to do real estate. I've been newly elected, and I think that the town residents really want to see some improvements to the downtown, and I want to organize a group to explore that. And I'm going to organize a volunteer group. And, one of the brilliant things she did at that time was she brought together a very diverse group of people from all kinds of backgrounds. Danny Dalsetti, who's here, was a part of it as a business owner, property owner. I was a resident with some development interest. There were realtors, community activist kind of people, business owners, and we all came together, and then guided by, through Yvonne, the Connecticut Main Street program, to talk about how we could make Darien better and what were the problems. Because at that point, people knew, and realtors would tell you, that when someone was coming out, some young couple or person was coming to look at buying a home in Darien, we had incredible schools, reputation for having a great community, the water, better train proximity than many of these towns, but the downtown looked pretty ratty. And so the realtors asked, were any of you realtors in this audience? Maybe not. We'll tell you, if you have friends who are, ask them. They used to take tours and kind of go by the high school and go by the library and go by the beaches and Tokenique or wherever, but avoid the downtown, because that was the weakness in Darien in terms of the value proposition relative to New Canaan, Westport, Greenwich, and so on. So I think that Yvonne's insight into that was very good. We weren't talking about affordable housing then. That was not yet kind of brewing. We were talking about how to make downtown Darien better and create more gathering places for people, to create a greater sense of community. And it worked. The Main Street Center program came in and talked a lot about things that we could do and why our zoning restrictions were so challenged, so tight. They wouldn't allow really the kind of development that people probably wanted. And so Penny built Grove Street Plaza, where now Flour, Water, Salt Bakery is, and Neat Coffee in that plaza, in 2002 or so. In 2008, I finished 1020 Boston Post Road. And I think, to me, the combination of those two things, Arthur Collins also had renovated the Playhouse with Tom Golden and brought, the tenants were very different then. So that didn't have the impact, I don't think, on the community as Grove Street Plaza or 1020 did. But I'll never forget, we finished 1020 Post in the fall of 2008 as the world was imploding. I thought, I'm a goner, to be candid with you. But what happened was just amazing. That restaurant opened up. I don't know if you guys remember, but when that restaurant opened up, it was the first new restaurant that the community really enjoyed, and it was just jumping. The Melting Pot had opened in 2002, but it was sort of a different environment, and I'm willing to bet very few, if any of you, went to the Melting Pot more than once. But 1020 was really different, and it was that, not to sound corny, but that kind of spoke to me, because I saw suddenly that through our work, we could create these community gathering places. and, give people a place to like interact with each other and see each other, because otherwise in Darien, it was really hard to have that experience in downtown. People had it, some people had it at their country club or Darien Men's Association or the DCA, but there weren't many places. So I'm telling you a long story about how we kind of got to all this and some of the spirit that is in it. But let's go to the next slide. Well, this is helpful. This is more designed for the retailers that we're talking to when people ask, how does the parking work? And like, where is the parking? Parking, I didn't know when I decided to not just do real estate investment, but to do development. I did not realize, maybe I was naive. I don't know if it's hot in here or I'm just getting hot, but I'm taking this jacket off. I did not realize that parking would be like the #1 topic in everything we do. I had no idea. And so this map kind of shows, where the parking is. We built that structured parking garage opposite the Darien Sports Shop. Did you guys see my April Fool's Day joke? Any of you? Okay, so that thing went up. It was pretty ugly. And I was getting a lot of heat from a lot of people. And Kate advised me not to do this. So she is smarter than me, but I couldn't help myself. And maybe I figured I have to have some fun with this. April Fool's was approaching. So I put a sign up that said, coming soon, Darien Data Center, powered by NVIDIA. And I put it up on Instagram. We put the banner up. It was a huge banner. My first draft was much more aggressive. Kate also wisely said, don't do that. I had a picture of Chairman Mao on it. And then I researched on Google the Chinese characters that mean Happy April Fool's Day. I learned that April Fool's Day was actually invented in China. I didn't know that. And I said, this was in the beginning of the DeepSeek freakout, whatever it was like DeepSeek's, this Chinese Communist Party organized data AI company that's going to like dominate the world. I have a Darien DeepSeek data center. But Kate pulled me back on that, as she often does. But anyway, we had some fun with that. And what we tried to assure people, and we, got up and I did a TV 79 show with Jim Cameron to try to explain to people, like, not to freak out that was going to get wrapped by a building and it would go away. We weren't going to put a concrete bunker on the Boston Post Road. So now you can start to see as you drive by, like, what it looks like. But that garage holds about 340 parking spaces, which is twice the size of the Center Street lot. So, that garage will be for retail use, and there's a small number of apartments in that building and a small office building. There's 200 these numbers are slightly off. It's been adjusted, but 250 spaces underground under the plaza of the building. And then, this was one of the good things that really comes of the collaboration and the exchange with zoning. And I think Joe Spain, no, I don't remember if you were there when this happened, but when we presented the original site plan, we had a lot of back and forth with the town. No one had built a structured parking garage. No one had built much underground parking. There was some underground parking under B of A, but this was like a back and forth with the town. And Susan Cameron was the chairman of the zoning commission at the time. And she was like, I don't want to park in an underground garage, and I don't want to park in a structured garage. And I said, I know it's not preferable, but we're trying to de-emphasize the car and take away the visibility of cars. And honestly, through the back and forth, we came to what I think is a better idea, which is that there's parking through the project, but then in the back of the project, between the office building and I-95, there's about 85 parking spaces, something like that, in that surface lot. So people will have choices. The parking will be free, okay? Just until and unless the town charges for parking. So what we've written into all our leases, and this is really hard, we're trying to, we're signing 10, 20, 30-year commitments to tenants, and we have to try to anticipate how things can change. I think we've anticipated a lot. I'm sure I know we haven't anticipated everything, but what we wrote into our leases is if the town ever should charge for parking, then we would charge the same rate, just so that we don't get all the people like moving over to our parking free, taking the free parking in our place and going to use other stores. The only other reason we're going to charge you, if you park in our lot, this is a warning, not that you guys would do this. I think membership in the DMA requires a certain level of integrity. But if you park in our lot and you take the train to New York and you come back 5 or 6 hours later, we're going to hit you with a big charge. So because we have to, people, we've learned the hard way, people will do anything for a free parking space. Even my wife, she's going to get upset with me for saying this, but she always parks at Palmer's and goes to the Norotan Heights train station. And I tell her, like, that is so embarrassing. You can't, if you get busted for parking at Palmer's, I'm going to look like such a jerk. You cannot do that. I know. Good. It'll prevent her from doing it again. But anyway, next. This is a layout showing the different buildings in phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is on the right side of Corbin Drive, or I guess the west side of Corbin Drive. And phase 2 is what's in construction right now. The amazing thing is, phase 1 is 100% leased, even all the apartments. And phase 2, we're almost 85% leased before we're done, which is really a godsend. But I would say that the worst thing that can happen if you're a developer of a project like this is you build it and no one comes. The second worst thing is if you build it and you're building it and like 85% of the people you need to show up showed up, because Kate and I are going to be pulling our hair out of our head between now and the end of the year, coordinating the work associated with all this. And, to date, it's just been us and the contractor building the core, what we call the core and the shell of the building. But we're about to start, the process of building spaces for retail tenants, having some tenants build their own spaces and office spaces that we have to build. But the neat thing about this is there's a driveway into the project, which we're now calling Market Street. There's a road through the project, which I'm going to just step away from, or maybe this works. Let's see if this works. Does that work? No. Does that work? Oh, yeah. So here's the post road. This is I-95. This is Market Street. This is an internal street that we're naming Penny Lane in honor of Penny Glassmeyer. This is that surface parking lot. The town gave us permission to close Penny Lane from May 1 to November 1. So this is a pedestrian walkway, and you'll see images of this in a minute. This is an area that can become public space, and back here can become, will become public space. One of the things that we felt was important from the Grove Street experience was just, again, to create these public gathering places where people could feel comfortable and would feel comfortable just, not having to buy something, but maybe get a coffee and sit with a friend, or, wait for your husband or wife or partner while they go shopping, or kids. But the also interesting thing that we've done here is, you might have noticed there was never a for lease sign up. So there was never a for lease sign. There was never, weirdly, some of my competitors would say, anything on CoStar. This was never on CoStar. All of the leasing that we've done has been word of mouth. So someone in Darien said, we really need a sushi restaurant. We went out and found the best sushi restaurant in the region, Hinoki, to open here. Someone in Darien introduced us to the owner of Millie's Restaurant from Nantucket. We got together with him. Nantucket is a favorite destination of many people, favorite vacation spot for many people in Darien. They're going to open the only Millie's in Darien. The other thing we really focused on was trying to find unique and cool businesses to come here that weren't in every town. We didn't want it to look like a mall. So, the typical development company with institutional capital would focus on, Doug was in that realm for a long time. Highest rent, who it is, best credit, get me the most economic reward I can for the risk I took. What we tried to do is say, we're going to create a great place that's going to enable people to do really good business, and we're going to pick unique and interesting places so Darien retains some of its character. That's why we kept all of the existing tenants. We decided to build the project in 2 phases so that all of our existing tenants that were in good shape could move across the street, like Barrett Bookstore or the Darien Toy Box. Everything is Rosy, Helen Ainson. If we had the right under the leases to knock the buildings down, tell them all to go on vacation for 2 or 3 years and come back when we were done. But our belief was that if we did that, they would not come back. That having 2 years away, Bill Jensen would say, I love the Toy Box, but it's a lot of work. I don't really want to do it again. Or Mrs. Daly would give up on the bookstore. And that just seemed to us like an iconic tenant that brought a lot of flavor and texture to the town, and it just seemed important. So we figured out how to do that. So it's all been word of mouth. There are a couple of national brands in here. Roan is a national men's athletic wear company, but it was founded by a young man and his brother from New Canaan, who now, one of them now lives in Darien, so he's locally based. Tate Bakery is, if any of you, Joe Lenahan is from Boston. Tate Bakery is just a beloved all-day cafe from Boston that I think you guys will really like. And, you know, when we put a post on Instagram about it, it's like the most liked thing we put up. People are really excited about that. It's got a huge following wherever they go. Corsica is a restaurant by the Barcelona Restaurant Group, but it's a different concept. So if you've ever been to Barcelona Restaurant in Stamford or Norwalk, or elsewhere, they have one at Fairfield, I think. They have a new concept, which is a French-Italian small plates concept that we think is going to be really appreciated. And, you know, you can have a couple small plates and share them with a friend and a glass of wine, and you won't spend more than $50. So we're trying to like find a way to make everybody happy if that's possible, and also find these unique businesses. Next slide. Oh, you know what? One last thing I want to say about that. If you could just go back to the previous. The other thing that we did that was just very different than a lot of other projects and what was typically happening around the country right now in mixed use development is we studied mixed use places around the country for 10, 15, 20 years. And we tried to figure out how to like make this look like it happened over time. So we wanted to make sure that it wasn't like some big 2-building complex that just fell out of the sky on a parking lot. And, you know, we're working with Bruce Beinfield of Beinfield Architecture. You know, in the very beginning, I said to him, like, you're going to have to like design a building, then like change your headset, come back to the next building, because we really want them to look complementary, not competitive with each other, and not uniform. Because uniformity didn't happen in downtowns. You know, if you look at Greenwich Avenue or New Canaan or Westport's Main Street, there are a series of small buildings, you know, that happened over time. We were trying to do that here. So that was super important to us, and I hope we'll accomplish it with the final result. Next slide. Yellow is retail, pink is generally restaurant. It's not quite accurate, but blue? Is there blue in there? Oh, public space, like a stairwell or whatever. That's what it looked like. This is what the site looked like in 2008. So it's kind of amazing when you think about, like, because people forget, your memory is amazing. You forget what it looked like, but that's an aerial view when we were starting 1020 Post. The gas station was in place, the Wyckoff building and the Tibbetts building at the end of Corbin, the post office, and then the hodgepodge of other buildings. All of those were owned by individual family partnerships or families. Next slide. And, you know, the 10 Corbin building, which when it was built was an amazing building. It was, I think, the first air-conditioned commercial building in Darien with an elevator, but it was tired. Weirdly, that building got the highest rents in Darien until we built 1020 Post Road. That building was always full. I was so worried when we bought it, we wouldn't be able to keep it full. It was always full. But you can see, like, they built the office building on top of the, you know, first story Frederick and Company and the Toy Box building that was there. These were just odd buildings that got built over time. Next slide. And, you know, again, you forget, but there were those warehouse buildings and Neil the jeweler and Spiro the cobbler and the Darien computer repair all in the back. All of those were individually owned, and we worked to try to, you know, relocate them. Spiro, in case you guys don't know, I'll get another little PSA. Spiro, we found a great space next to Papa Joe's. So if your shoes need repair, Spiro's in business by Papa Joe's. We found him a space. Next spot. In the post office. Next slide. And just parking and, you know, the hodgepodge. Next slide. B of A. Next slide. And this is what we built. This is phase 1. So that's Barrett Bookstore and Sale to Sable and Shoes and More. Next slide. And Compass. Again, some of these tenants are different, but next slide. That's a 35 Corbin. So this is just an example of what I was saying. It's not economically rational on a standalone basis to build one small building like that with 4 apartments and 2 small stores. That's an expensive building to build. But we did it because it enabled us to create a connection into the parking lot just to the north of it. So you can now, when this is all done, you'll be able to circulate around all the lots and through from Corbin into the Center Street lot, just past this building. And also it just gave the place a little architectural character. Next slide. This is the building going up opposite the sports shop. So, there's basically all women's, mostly all women's clothing stores that will go along that strip. That was originally, for those of you who've been doing this for a while or have been to my presentations before, that was originally going to be LL Bean. We had tried to come up with an idea that we thought, we wanted an anchor, and we wanted a store that we thought was sort of consistent with the vibe of Darien 20 years ago. And LL Bean, I loved. I went to Colby. I was a big fan of LL Bean. I thought it'd be a great spot for them. And they agreed. I wrote the CEO a letter one night, and he wrote me back within 2 hours and said, I'm from Fairfield, actually, and we'd love to open in Darien. We know we have so many customers there. They were going through a period of opening a lot of stores. Many people didn't know that, but they opened all over the country and in New Haven. They had one at the shops at Yale. But by the time we got to the point where we were ready to go and we needed them to commit, they wouldn't commit. They were having some problems with some of the stores, and maybe the brand has kind of lost its luster a little bit for the mass market. I still love it, and they wouldn't commit. So, we went back and forth with the town, and again, this is where our relationship with the zoning commission's been good and really constructive. We said we could do what everybody else would do and just wait and hope. But, I can't honestly think of a great 15,000-foot store to anchor this project that people are going to be excited about. We were getting calls from Ulta, like the discount cosmetics company. And I just thought, after all this work, like, that's not what we want at the front, at the anchor, or the entrance to Darien. So we cut that space back in size, and we actually added more parking, probably because I was getting a little bit nervous about parking, and you never can have enough. Although I will say, and I probably will be wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be wrong in the long run here. It's just a matter of how long it takes. When we were in the zoning conversations, I said to the zoning board, I know you won't give me credit for this, but self-driving is coming. This is like 12 years ago. And I'd been going deep on it. And I was studying in San Francisco. I had these maps, maps of every year from like 2010 through 2018, facilities that had been built, how much was spent to build research facilities studying autonomous driving. And it was like an explosion. And you could see it happening. And you could see these companies you never heard of starting it. And then you started to see Volkswagen and Chevrolet or General Motors and others getting involved, and Google with Waymo, what became Waymo, and Tesla and Uber. And I think that the zoning commissioners looked at me like I was totally insane, or as David's and my old boss used to say, how do you know when the developer's lying? Can you answer that, David? His lips are moving. It's a very Dick Gumpel statement. And I said, I really think it's coming. And by the way, I took a ride in my first Waymo in San Francisco this year or last year. It's unbelievable. Has any of you been in a Waymo? Is any of you willing to go in a Waymo? Okay. It's unbelievable. By the way, the Waymo is a much better driver than I am. So, I mean, that's for that reason alone, I'm convinced it's going to work. Next slide. Again, the view, this is a view from the sports shop, and we took the Corbin sign off the old 10 Corbin building. We restored it, and it's going to get remounted up there. I think it is, right, Kate? We didn't forget the blocking. We're getting it done before, yeah. Next slide. And I'll try to go faster. This is the left side of the parking garage. 2 floors of apartments above the stores. Next slide. That's Roan. This will be that store by the men's and now women's athletic wear company started by a local resident, and this will be their largest store to date. Next slide. Roan. Started by Nate and Ben Checkett's. Millie's Restaurant. Dave Checkett's son, yeah. Next slide. Again, we were trying to present to the Post Road like a kind of traditional, but with a little modern edge, New England architecture, right? And not create anything that would be jarring as you go down the Post Road or Corbin Drive. Next slide. So that's the corner of Corbin and the Post Road with Tate Bakery, a store to be determined, and Framebridge on the right. Next slide. and chopped. Next slide. Barry's Boot Camp. This is on Corbin Drive. Next slide. By the way, I should say on Barry's Boot Camp, like one of the other things I think about a lot, and I think you guys will appreciate this. I think about when we're working through these tenant possibilities and who we want, I think a lot about what's going to make a young couple want to move to Darien. So like, I think in terms of like competitive pressure, like when we're trying to lease our office buildings, we have to have a better case than the other buildings. Why does someone want to work with us? Good service, good buildings, good maintenance, good design. But, we really think about it in terms of filling the apartments, but also like creating housing value and improving the perception of Darien's housing market and value in Darien. And so we've tried to be very thoughtful and like pick tenants that we also know when young people come visit and they see certain things, they'll go, oh, Darien has a Barry's? I'm going to move to Darien. And it may sound stupid, it may sound silly to you, but I promise you, if you ask real estate brokers out there, the tenant selection that we've done here is definitely driving some of the interest in what's happening here. It's a very strong positive. Shake Shack was less of a positive. Whole Foods Market, when the zoning commission, with a lot of controversy, I think, approved the Whole Foods in Darien, probably 15 years ago or more? About 15 years ago, I think. Yeah, but that was it 15 years ago? 99. So having that Whole Foods, really had a positive impact on the perception of downtown Darien. It was a validator of downtown Darien. And I think also from a housing market point of view, it's statistically provable that like apartment units above Whole Foods Market sell at higher prices. So Hale Lane, I don't know if anyone lives on Hale Lane. One of my friends recently sold his mother's condo on Hale Lane. And he called me after and he goes, thank you so much. I go, for what? He's like, we got the Corbin bump. I'm like, what's the Corbin bump? He's like, we sold my mom's condo for like 40% more than we expected because people want walkable downtowns. They want to be able to walk to downtown. They want to be able to like enjoy the place. And they wanted something that looked a little bit better than what we had before. This is another small building going up opposite that small gray building that exists on Corbin Drive. That will be a hair salon and beauty center. Next slide. This is the market, the interior street, Penny Lane. I'll give you guys something you learn something every day, hopefully. Kate and I worked with a landscape architect on this. That street is not a street as typically designed. It's called a Wunnerf. Does anybody know what a Wunnerf is? A Wunnerf is a Dutch concept of a street that is shared and neither car nor pedestrian is dominant. It's not designed to be car dominant. So it's meant to be shared by cars and people. That's the street that we have the right to close from May 1 to November 1. So it's all flush. There's no big curb and step off as would be typical. And this was the original landscape architectural design. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to try to get off this stage here. This is the office building, which is tucked in the back along 95. We didn't think that people would want to live in apartments looking out over 95. And we wanted to create a sound buffer between, the 95 and the public spaces. So you wouldn't hear the roar of 95 or trucks going down the road. So we deliberately placed the office building there. That's actually a 5-story office building, but deliberately the 5th floor is pushed back. So when you're in the plaza, you don't see the 5th floor. And that was, again, a little architectural trick by Bruce to give us the ability to have that space, but not have it overpower the plaza. Because if you were looking up 5 full stories, it might have felt a little overwhelming. And Bruce was really very good at scale. But this design gives us the ability to market to, the broadest range of tenants who want Class A space. Darien historically, maybe not so politically correct, but it didn't attract like Class A tenants. There were some, but mostly they were firms started by local people. Well, the tenants we have now, let me start with what we have. McKinsey signed a lease. So McKinsey's moving from Stamford to Darien. Aon signed a 30,000 foot lease. They're taking the entire 3rd floor. Balance Point Capital is a private credit fund. They're taking the full 5th floor. These are tenants that historically would not have moved to Darien. But those people who work for those firms are going to be supporting the downtown. They're going to be going to restaurants. They're going to be having client meals. They're going to be entertaining, and they're not demanding anything in terms of schools. There's no risk, as people worry about some of this development, like what's the impact on schools and so on. And the traffic is in and out, early in the morning, out in the afternoon, and it's and they also have a lot of train commuters. The McKinsey people will have a lot of train commuters. Next slide. Another view of the office building from the side. Next slide. That's Corsica Restaurant. That'll get tweaked a little bit, but next slide. The Plaza, Balance Point got a pretty sweet deck on their roof. They were the first tenant to commit, so they got really the best space. Next slide. That's a view of where we were a couple of months ago. No, we don't have views of the water. Next slide. And then lastly, and I'll turn it over to Kate with this. This is what Grove Street Plaza looked like about 25 years ago. So next slide. And this is what Penny built. Next slide. But when it was built, it wasn't active. The plaza was empty most days because there was a cosmetic store, a children's clothing store, and the Melting Pot that was only open for dinner. Over time, I helped Penny change the tenancy. So we got the coffee shop. Now we have Flower Water Salt, and now Roots Restaurant, which is opened. And, on any nice day, you go by there, it's always full and active. And we started to see, this was like our little laboratory. We started hosting concerts on Friday nights just to get people out. Next slide. We started to see really interesting, amazing things happening with people wanting to come together in the community for a free concert and just see their friends and neighbors. And so we're trying to extrapolate from what we learned at Grove Street into the Corbin District and those public places. Next slide. This is a slide that summarizes why Kate wants to kill me right now, because I basically said, Kate, we got to make the plaza space better. We got to make it a little greener. I honestly think that with the developments in downtown, I think residents of the town didn't really understand fully what was required and what was coming, in that the town always required us to create public space to allow a third floor. There was a certain ratio, I can't remember what it is now. Joe Spain never forgets anything, he probably remembers. You had to dedicate public space to create a third floor residential area or office. And it's not required in the zoning regs today that it's a green space. It's a public space. So it can be like that little plaza by Gopher ice cream, or which isn't reserved for Gopher. Anyone can go sit there, but public space, not green space. As the latest projects have come out of the ground and been finished, my sense, because I live here and I hear it every day, what people are thinking, how they're reacting to what's going on, is that people thought there'd be more green space. And, with increased awareness, worry, whether you believe it or not what I'm here to talk about, but in climate change, there's definitely a lot of talk about the need to kind of preserve green space. And we're increasing the density of construction or development in Darien generally with these commercial projects. So the focus on green space has become more important. So I just felt like where the road we were on, it was, especially when we got into the space and the buildings were up, it just was at risk of our original design feeling a little too urban. And so we brought in a group from Washington, D.C. and Kansas City to help us kind of retool. And all these guys do is focus on designing public realm. Bruce Beinfield was trying to do it with us. He got a terrible pancreatic cancer diagnosis in November of 2 years ago, and he passed away in June, so he couldn't finish it with us. Next slide. So this other group came in and helped us retool it. So this is Penny Lane looking toward Millie's and Tate and the Darien Toy Box, and you'll see we're going to try to put actual grass in. We know we're going to probably have to replace it. There is some chance that in 5 years we get frustrated and we put artificial grass in. We're going to try not to, but we're going to conduct this experiment to see how it goes. But we redesigned the tree wells and figured out how to be able to plant larger trees. So again, we could try to recreate some of the magic that I think exists at Grove Street Plaza. Next slide. This is the walkway into the project from the post road with Roan on the right and Millie's on the left, and the office building in the foreground. Next slide. And this is that, what we call it the secret garden for lack of another name right now, but like the area in between Corsica and Barry's. And again, these are just places you can come I don't know, play chess, I heard there's a cribbage club. You guys can play cribbage. Whoever is on the cribbage group, you can play cribbage over there. Next slide. And these are the apartments. This is the lobby to our apartment. Next slide. This is a little outdoor dining area on the roof. Next slide. Yeah, and that's a view of the kitchen in the foreground and the living area in the background. Or sorry, foreground is the living area, kitchen's the foreground. You know, the idea here for these apartments was to create, as I kept putting it, like a place where people could downsize without feeling like they were compromising. So every unit, even the one bedrooms, have a half bath, like a powder room, so your guests don't have to come through your bedroom to get to the bathroom. The two bedrooms have 2.5 baths. They're a little larger than the typical institutional unit. So, you know, our one bedrooms are 930 or 40 feet on average. Our two bedrooms are probably 1,400, 1,500 feet on average. And we have a lot of people who've moved into our buildings like 745 Post Road and 1020 and now the first phase of Corbin who've been with us for years. We have people in 745 who moved in when we finished it 12 years ago and never left. One question I know you guys will ask is, who's renting these apartments? So I would say it's different than what we expected in an interesting way. Some things that we never expected have happened. And I think some of this is related to COVID, but probably 10% of the units are rented to young couples, usually pretty high income, who want to try Darien before they commit. Usually they come without a child. Some of them have had children and moved on. One couple actually had a baby in the apartment deliberately. That's a first. That's never, I don't know that that's ever happened in Darien before. Pulled up to work one day and there was a van in front that said doula to go. Like, I guess today's the day. But that's about 10% of the group. 50% are the empty nesters we expected. You know, people like yourselves who lived in town, raised a family, kids are gone, want to simplify, sell their house in this incredible housing market. And then 30%, 20 to 30% are, you know, what we call the grandma and grandpas who basically sell their home someplace else and move here from Puerto Rico, Boston, New York, Florida, Martha's Vineyard to be near their usually daughter and grandchildren. I would observe. There's only one who came to be near her son. Take that for what it's worth. But it's an interesting group of people. And, you know, the one thing I can say, so in the first 38 units, because this is also one of the zoning concerns that always comes up, in the first 38 units, there are 3 children. I'm not sure I'm supposed to talk about this, but I will. 2 are with a woman who got divorced. Her husband moved to Darien Commons. She moved to our project. So they were already in the school system. The family had a situation. They're still here. I don't really consider that a net add. And then there's another couple who came from California. I think they're trying to find a house, but they're struggling. And so they have a young daughter who goes to Tokenique School. So we have 3 kids in 38 apartments. So you know, at least I can't speak to the other projects. I honestly can't if they have more young families and the worry about the school system is real. I honestly think from what I've heard, like enrollment is projected to decline. So I honestly think we're going to be fine. But we recognize that like Darien has, you know, seen a significant increase in housing, apartment housing. And that's an issue and a concern for people. So I think we just have to kind of play it out. And I think that I know the town, because we talk to them all the time about it, is kind of watching it and trying to figure out how to navigate, you know, all of the pressure from the state and what's right and what we believe is right, or what they believe is right to kind of create the best possible outcome. Next slide. I think we're turning it over to Kate for you guys, you guys are going to be grateful. Yes. We're going to talk, Kate's going to give you a little overview of the construction process, the big dig of Darien.
Hello, my name is Kate Perez, and I've worked with David since late 2019, focused on the Corbin project. I'll give you a few fun facts about the construction process so that we have time for questions too. So we started in mid-December 24, and no one knew what we were doing until spring of 25 because this is what the site looked like. So David mentioned an underground parking garage. The entirety of the site area that you can see depressed is the parking zone. It sits under 4 of the buildings. and has 240 parking spaces. The water table in Darien is very high because of the proximity to the sound. And as part of building this underground garage, that's the bottom of the foundation slab is 14.5-ish feet below grade. The water table is only about 8 feet below grade. So we had to do 263 rock anchors as part of the garage construction, which are basically 4-inch diameter steel bars that screw into bedrock and hold the foundation down so that it won't rise when the water comes back. So you can see a tiny little white pipe around the perimeter. That was a dewatering system that was in for about 1.5 years that like artificially depressed the water table throughout that process. And that has been off for several months now. But the rock anchors is something we haven't done before and was fun to learn how to do, but very time consuming. So for about 1.25 years, we were toiling behind the fence in the hole. And the garage was so large, the slab is 2.5 feet thick and needed to be done in about 14 different pours, just in terms of like how much concrete you can pour in a day. Next slide. So that's kind of the, this is Will, my 3.5-year-old who loves to come to the construction site. He's the scale figure in reference to a rock anchor next to him. So that's one of our 263. Next slide, please. And here you can see all of the anchors sticking up and a lot of the site work that had to be done. It was a cool geological discovery as we kept digging down. We exported about 70,000 cubic yards of dirt, sand, bedrock. And when we got down to the bottom, it was very beachy sand, which, you know, we did a lot of investigation and had a great geotech engineer on board. So we figured a lot of that out beforehand, but it was still very interesting to see it look like a beach when we got down to the bottom. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the tower crane that was used to erect the precast garage. I'm sure many of you saw it go up, but it was all fabricated off-site in Brantford and trucked here in 4 or 5 trailers a day. And they put it up over the course of 4-ish months. And that was a fun process for it to go up right away until we started getting heat on the size of the garage, yes, and the data center. Next slide, please. And this also shows you sort of the level that's below ground. And one part we haven't touched on is the undergrounding of the overhead electrical and telecom lines, which we're hoping to do in spring of this year. So all the spaghetti that you see on the right is going in underground conduits. And when I came to Baywater, I knew that would be the hardest part of this project, and it continues to be the hardest part of this project. There are a lot of different providers, and as you know, Darien has only so many train track crossings, and the post road is one of them. So all of the major providers travel on the post road, Leroy, you know, kind of all of the highway and train crossings. So we're working with 4 different providers plus electrical and kind of coordinating all of their pathways. So that's still part of the plan. It's just kind of a late step in the plan. And we also, as part of the excavation, needed to put shoring in to support the post road while we dug down so deep next to the post road. So this image kind of shows you that 15-foot drop. So there was a lot going on behind the fence that you couldn't see. Next slide, please. I'll open it for Q&A. David, do you want to?
What do we do? Hopefully we left enough time. Yes, sir. Do you want this one? No. I have one.
Yes, 1, 2. There you go. David, great presentation. I've been dying to get some information about this. So besides doing our fun night at Upper Crusty, I was always hitting you up for it. But anyway, 2 questions I have. Have you put any infrastructure in the garages for electric charging?
Kate? Well, I better be careful. Yeah. So I told you about my infatuation with
Yeah.
driverless cars. I have
Right.
a Tesla.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Okay.
And so yes, I think we put 20 in phase 1, 12. Mike. Oh yeah. Where'd that other mic go? I have the mic.
Yeah. We have 10 in phase 1. Oh, all right. We have 10 in phase 1 in the underground garage, and people are using 4 to 5 of them. So we have capacity for extra. And in phase 2, we have the capacity for 24, I think. And so we have to decide how many of those actual chargers we want to install day 1, but we have the electrical capacity for 20 something. Yeah.
And we're working to finalize the details of a level 3 charging station. So we have a basic agreement with Rivian to do 6 or 8 now.
Okay.
I think it went to 8 level 3 charging in that surface parking lot. That's the fast charge.
Yeah. Now, the other question I had is regarding storage with the apartments. Is there going to be storage?
No.
Okay.
Underground parking
Yeah.
is so expensive.
Gotcha.
And to be candid, it was just too expensive. And, you know, there's hollow tree self-storage. People have found a way. It's not optimal, but we didn't do storage in the facilities. Yep.
I've been very impressed. I've been very impressed with the architectural approach you've taken, and it's quite a contrast to what we see in Heights Road and I guess the Federated project and all of that. Does the architectural care that you take translate into higher rents that you were able to get?
I would say yes, but it's not why we do it. You know, I grew up in the real estate business. David and I did a lot of work with one of the best developers in the country, Gerald Hines. And I grew up as a banker working with them, with Hines, and got to know them very well. And they kind of had Jerry Hines had a philosophy that, you know, if you work with great architects and you use better materials, the buildings will just perform better over time. And they won't get tired, they won't fall apart, and they will command the highest rents in the best markets and the highest rents in the worst markets, and they'll stay full. And so when I did 1020 Post Road, candidly, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I had never built a building before. I guess we did the 2 buildings up in Wilton, but when it was in Darien, it was a little different. So we hired Mark Finley. We designed that building that I think looks like it's been there for a long time now. And that got the highest rents that had ever been seen in Darien. Corbin's outperforming on the apartments. I think a 1-bedroom at Federal is like $3,500 a month. Our 1-bedrooms are $5,100 a month. I would never have predicted that. To be totally blunt, I did not expect that. I did not expect there to be that kind of a difference. On the office side of things as well, the building we're calling One Market is sort of the talk of Fairfield County and the region now, because there had never been an office lease signed above $50 a foot in Darien. We started to see $55 a foot. We predicted we would get $60 a foot. We signed the first lease at 60, the second at 70, the third at 70, the fourth at 79, and the last one at 90. Now, to be candid with you, I'm not counting our money, because what I also didn't predict, I mean, I feel like this is a group I can just be really honest. Kate and I, the shingles, go back, if we went back to the shingles slide, the reason I got shingles, our construction budget was like 30 to 40% higher than we expected because of pandemic induced inflation. So honest, and interest rates have gone up. So thank God, I'm thankful every day. I go to St. Thomas More every week. I have a daily prayer app. I pray on every morning. You know, but I think, you know, people do see a difference in quality. People will pay something different for quality. And I think just downtown is different than Norotan Heights. It's just different. It's a different market. And that's fine. That's good. I mean, we're not competing against each other at all. We're not competing against this for the same retail tenants or office tenants, and probably not for the same apartment tenants. Yes, sir.
Good morning, David.
Mr. Kanzi, Chairman Kanzi, the man who was there for most of all of it.
I was there in 2001. From then on, I've watched this thing blossom in downtown. I want to just tell a little story and then an admonition. I was doing some environmental remediation for the gas station site that used to be by this Darien Sport Shop. Some of you may remember it. And we got down to 15 feet, and that's when I hit water. And I looked across the post road, and here was the pit where the underground parking presumably was supposed to go, and it was a lake. And I sent David a text, and I said, "Hey, David, have you hit China yet?" At any rate, in terms of the admonition, the biggest problem I think this project, and not just this project, but the redevelopment of the town is going to have is parking. And as many of you know, the site behind the Nielsen's Florist is being developed. And I think it's like 170 units. I mean, it's going to be big. And the concept, the problem is, for all the years what I was doing in planning and zoning, we always wanted to create a town where people would walk between destinations. You park once and you walk. But I think in what David is doing here will eventually achieve that. But notwithstanding that, the town, the parking authority for the town are the selectmen, not planning and zoning. And the selectmen have a major job ahead of them to figure out how they're going to manage the traffic in this town. And you may see in some structured parking projects go on or being discussed. But I just want to forewarn people that this is not over because it's all, and this is with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. You're not going to, once that project is built behind Nielsen's, it's going to get to be a very interesting place.
No, listen, as I think I started to say, we have done a lot in Darien. And, this may not be in my economic self-interest, or some cynical people would say, oh, it's in your cynical. So I don't think it's a bad idea to pump the brakes a little bit and just see how it all shakes out and make sure we don't overdo what's going on, which is going to be hard to do given state pressure to add housing. And we can talk about that if you'd like to. Yes, Randy.
Say last question.
I don't think so. Is the red light on?
Hello? You got it. Is it working?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm just, with all the storm stuff last week and everybody flooding the supermarkets and the world's coming to an end, are we going to lose power? And I heard a story, and I don't know if this is entirely accurate, but the federal project has a backup generator. And what I heard was it only supplies power to the public spaces and not to the individual apartments. What do you guys have planned for backup when the grid goes down?
We just have backup power for life safety. So, our residents are out of power, but we have life safety backup. That's it. I mean, the size of a generator you would need to power fully one of these things. Oh yeah. The other thing is, as part of the undergrounding of power lines. The town, when we went to zoning originally, they probably knew Penny and I would have a hard time saying no to them. They said, you know, while you're doing this, if we can approve this project, one thing we'd really appreciate if you try to accomplish a wish we've had for many years and underground the power lines. Can you try to do that? And I said, I'd have no idea of what that will cost or what that will require, but I give you my word, we will try. And so we started these dialogues, these conversations with Eversource. Jamie Stevenson was in some of them. The first meeting with all our engineers and Eversource, they said, this can't be done. And then there was this one moment where Bruce Pert, one of the engineers, like a light bulb went off and he goes, no, wait, I got an idea. I see how we can do it. And then Eversource actually figured out that by doing the undergrounding of the power lines and reconfiguring things in the way that we proposed, they could actually create 2 feeds of power to our project in many of the buildings downtown. So if the grid goes out, if the circuit goes down in one area, our project automatically gets switched to another area, another circuit. So the probability of our losing power is lower. It's not 0, but it's lower, and that's pretty unique. And so Eversource has been working pretty hard over the years to like create redundancy across these commercial buildings and commercial projects where they can. And that's one of the hidden benefits, unforeseen benefits of the undergrounding of lines.
Well, one last question.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Really enjoyed it. My question actually was about the undergrounding, and the question is, how far north of your property will it extend, or will it go back up at that point?
We're going to go from exit 11, the ramp, all the way to Corbin Drive to in front of the Bank of America building. And we're going to stop there. And what I hope is that people will see that and say, wow, that's awesome. Like, we should keep going, but I am too tired to be the person to like figure out the rest of it, honestly. I mean, it's really expensive. It's a 7-figure investment. And as Kate said, it's been brutal. It has probably been the hardest part of the project, just because we had to negotiate with all the data line providers, other property owners who have no economic, well, I would argue they have an economic interest, because by bearing the power lines, we're beautifying the downtown, which I would argue makes their properties more valuable. But one of them wouldn't agree to that. And so the Cadillac version of what we were going to try to do isn't going to happen, unfortunately. But the power lines on our side of the road are going to come down, and down Corbin Drive, they're going to come down. And we've told the town, like, we have the playbook, we know how to do this, and we will help, but we can't take the lead. Like, we need extra help, because, you know, it's been, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you it's been 12 years of work. And for long periods of time, probably 20-25% of our day, just corralling I call it frogs in a bucket. You're trying to get all these frogs in a bucket and you get them all set, and then one jumps out, and it's brutal. So it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my business career.
So David and Kate, thank you very much on behalf of all of us for coming. This was terrific. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.